Greeting, HexedHavoc here with another video. Today we're going to be looking at all things curves. So we want to just a quick overview here on curves and why they're important. So let's get straight into it, shall we? Alright, so being able to play and draw cards that use all of your available resources is said to be playing on curve. The importance of this is not to be understated. When building a deck, you want to give yourself the best chance of maximizing your resources each turn of the game. So you're playing cards on curve, which is to say playing a 1 resource card on turn 1, a 2 resource card on turn 2, and so on, greatly increases the tempo or speed at which your deck operates. Generally, aggressive decks want to have most of their cards costing 1, 2, and 3 resources, with only a handful costing 4 and 5. Now, this is something I recommend very much for limited. The reason for this is simple, really, is that, in limited formats, which is draft, sealed, and Evo, you often find, and I often find, that a lot of games are won by the player that curves out. So this is, for example, with drops on 2 through 5, that is something you'll see very often. For example, because if you have a player that does, especially if they do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the other player stumbles at any point, say they don't have a 1 drop or a 2 drop, they're going to be greatly behind in tempo and immediately put on the back foot, which can be in a lot of cases just a bit too much to recover from. So that's my go-to strategy in limited, is to increase my chances of curving out, and I like to do aggression as much as possible. If I can, get a good draft, for example, or even just building a sealed pool, I like that strategy because it does abuse the fact that if your opponent stumbles, it works out very nice. The other important aspect of your curve is your resources, of course, in your deck itself. This is very, very important, and because your curve dictates how many resources that is then recommended for your deck. A deck with only, say, 1 to 3 costs, maybe you got a couple 4s in there, or maybe a 5. A deck with majority of your cards being low cost, in that 1 to 3 range, you're gonna maybe run below the norm in terms of your resources. Whereas a deck with many cards above 4, you're likely to want to go above the norm, even if it's just slightly. The normal amount of resources for any given deck, a good starting point is 40%. That's what I've always used, and that's that is the general consensus is 40%. So that means in a limited environment, where the minimum deck size is 40, that would be 16 resources as a starting point, as your starting point. Yeah, in constructed. That is its minimum deck size being 60, and that's going to be therefore your starting point for that. Now, there are many gameplay mechanics that can affect the consistency of your deck and all that sort of stuff. Fate Beef being a prime example. So this is just a guideline. There's many cases in which you might see aggressive decks running 20 shards, some with 18, because they're running a lot of the sweet, yummy ice shards, as they have Fate Weave, and Fate Weave can really, really help. But yeah, that's a whole nother story. But that's a starting point there, give you a bit of an idea. So let's actually go into the HEX Client now, and take a look at how do you actually even see your curve, a good visual representation. And the way to do that is to simply, so we've got a deck here, and the way this is the default view. So this is how you'll normally see your decks with this view here. So you don't really get an idea of your curve. In this view, you have obviously lots of other information over here, and you can look at a cost breakdown and all that sort of good stuff. But the easiest method is to go over to here, which is the stack view. You click that, and then voila, very nice. You can easily see from just at a glance the curve of your deck. So you can see that in this example we have a lot of 1s, 2s, and 3s, and while this card is 7, it actually has synergy within the deck, and it gets reduced cost. So this is basically free in this deck. So the deck, and this here is an X cost card. X cost being you get to choose how much you pay for it. So this deck is topping out at 3 resources basically, and because of that, it's actually running below the curve, so below the norm for this curve, which is at 37% instead of that that default starting point of 40%, going down to 22 here, and so that's probably could even go lower honestly, but you'd then probably run more ice shards, which can interrupt your tempo. There's lots of things to consider, but that's how you basically want to see your curve from the stack view there within the client. So let's actually now move over to we're going to use a really nice website here that I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. We're going to go over to pvptools.net, and we're going to just have a look at some different decks and just give examples of good curves. Maybe we'll find some that are not so good. So let's have a quick look here. Let's jump into the website. You can look at the history of limited, constructed, all that good stuff. We'll go into constructed to start with. Now, constructed and limited, when it comes to your deck's curve. Now, constructed is there's a lot of different factors. There's you get to control your consistency of your deck. You've got fate weave. You can fill your deck with that sort of stuff. There's a lot of factors. So you will notice a difference between limited, but it should still follow the general rule of having a lot of 2-drops, a lot of 3s. But yeah, obviously there will be a lot of differences. So we'll just go over to the previous bash, and we'll look at some of the decks at the top. So let's just click one here, and you get immediately we'll see it from in the stack view, and you'll see here now this is an interesting. No, I guess that's fairly normal. So not a huge amount of 1-drops, but a lot of 2s, a lot of 3s, and topping out at 4. So that's that deck there. We can go down to this one here. Now this is a control deck, so it has a lot of 1 cost, not many 2s, a lot of 3s, 4s, and this is actually going to be using a gem here to make it a 4 cost. So still topping out at 4 really, but it's also running Mind Call. So again, because it's a constructed deck, it's running some other things that it's actually, this is my deck. This is what I ran in the bash. This is very bad list there I ran because I put it together about 3 minutes before the tournament started. But yeah, so that is again, let's keep going down so you can see the general theme here. Okay, so the socket deck's a good example because again, a lot of 1-drops in this deck. It has ways in which to reduce the cost of pretty much most of the other stuff it runs with the sentries. So just a really nice, this is an aggressive deck. You want to be curving out, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Let's see if we can find some different examples. So we got a control deck over here. So you can see that it's a Twilight Archon deck, so it's using Nightfalls and Puppet Goot to make this cost free of this card. So really it's 2 6-drops, a lot of 4s, but it still has a decent amount. So because it's a control deck, it's hoping to cheat into play one of these Archons quick, but so the curve is different, and that's what you're going to see in constructed environments, different curves. So again, you're going to see here just a few 1s, but a lot of 2s, decent amount of 3s again, and in this one it's stacking up a lot on the 4s, but again, constructed being a different beast, there's a lot more things to consider, but again, with the aggressive decks you're going to see things like this. But let's have a look at some limited ones, and that's where you're going to see we'll see if we can find some nothing in here that I would say is I mean, my deck can definitely use some upgrading there, but limited, you're going to see, we'll be able to find some bad curves and some good examples as well. But you can't always control that, of course. If you're doing a draft and you don't draft enough 2-drops, well, that's something you should try and draft as many as possible to a certain extent, of course. But 2-drops are king in my opinion. So what are we looking at here? Let's go to the Clash. Clash being the sealed tournament that happens every week. So we'll look at the first place here. Have a look at his curve. So you can see here, he's managed to get a majority of 2s, which is what you generally want, especially in limited, in my opinion. And then second highest should be 3s, and that's what he's got there. And so many, he's got a lot of 4s. And then but as you can see, as you get higher and higher, the increasing of the cost, you're going to have less and less is a good pattern to follow there. So again, majority of 2s, so, this is a fine curve here. Nothing wrong with that one. Let's just keep looking. So here we have one that is a bit too heavy on the 4s. So but again, in limited, that's you do what you can, right? But you want to be getting as many. You need to have that early interaction. A deck like this one here, if they stumble and they don't have because they have one. Call the Grave is not something that can be do anything on turn 1, so that's out of the question. The Splinter here can get a decent blocker down, but it's just one card. And then in terms of turn 2, what's this card here? Alright, so in terms of things that can actually stop pressure, there's 3 cards there. So if your opponent was to play, 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop, and so on, this is the type of curve that can easily fall behind if it's especially on the draw. If it doesn't have a place for 1 and 2, which again, because there's not much here, the odds of it is decreased. So therefore, if your opponent does have a very nice curve, a very aggressive curve, you'll be on the back foot immediately. And by the time you can actually do stuff that interacts with their cards or get stuff on the board, you might just be too far behind at that point. That's why I value aggression over most things in terms of limited. So yeah, again over here we can see another majority of 2s, a good amount of 3s, and then just a handful of the higher stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of things to consider, but we can't cover everything. But hopefully these just looking at here's another good example here. A lot of 2s, a good amount of 3s, and then just a few. So that's my style of curve right there. I want to be able to play things as much as possible. So if you do get stuck and you've got a majority of 2s, then you can still keep doing stuff, especially if you have things like premium removal, like 2-cost removal that can, Decree of Banishing being a good example, can pretty much take care of any troop. But yeah, that's you can look at all those different curves there on the website there. But yeah, that should pretty much give you a bit of an overview of the importance in curves and all that sort of good stuff. So yeah, pretty much wrap that up there. Thank you for watching, and if you do have any questions, feel free to post them in the YouTube comments. But yeah, just always consider your curve. That's the first thing you should consider especially when you're trying to determine how many resources you need. The more high drops you have, the more likely you're going to want to do maybe 17 resources instead of the default 16 and so on. But yeah, the curve of your deck, one of the most important things. So yeah, hopefully that was somewhat helpful for you all. Thank you again, and take care.